folks, Joel Self, outdoor instructor here, and swinging around in the garden just to do something a little bit different whilst we film this video. I've opted to go for a Q&A today, and I've had to write down all the questions because there are so many of them. This is probably going to end up being a few different videos, a bit of a Q&A series, because I've got lots of questions about being an instructor, and lots of questions about climbing, and lots of questions about equipment and things, so I might have to sort of categorise those a little bit. And today we're going to talk about being an instructor and the questions that have come up surrounding that. So, we'll start off with the question from Sam Trent, who has asked, what was your first job in the outdoor industry? So, my first job wasn't particularly glamorous. I started off by pressure washing quad bikes for Team Pursuits in Laycock, and I've now sort of progressed to doing some work for them where I instruct, including using the quad bikes, but back then it was turn up and maybe 5 hours of pressure washing all the mud off the quad bikes, Honda Pilots, things like that. I once got asked to mow the grass. I did only get asked once because poor old Pete, who runs Team Pursuits, is very particular about his grass, and I made a real mess of it, like a proper mess. But I'm very good at pressure washing quad bikes, so I did manage to do that as my first job, and it was brilliant, and I've sort of carried on from there to now work for Pete doing other bits and pieces as well, which is brilliant. So there you go, Sam Trent. Second question is from Ben Haddon, who's asked, what's the worst injury you've had to deal with, and what is the worst injury you've had yourself? So kind of worst client injury and worst injury of my own. Well, yeah, people don't really like talking about injuries, do they? But we'll do it anyway. Worst injury that I've had with a client would be not actually on one of my sessions, but on a fellow instructor's session. I was at the wall, and they put the thumb into the bolt hole of a large hold, and the thumb was up that way, so as they fell back there was no room for the thumb to come out of the hole, so all the bone inside the thumb just went out the palm of their hand. So that was quite messy, and not very fun to deal with, but that would be kind of the worst client injury I've had to deal with myself. I've sort of been around when other accidents have happened and things. Luckily I've never had any serious accidents on my sessions, and I really want to keep that track record, so if you're coming with me, don't hurt yourselves. Then you're also asking about worst injury I've had. Well, this ankle does a lot of clicking, does a lot of complaining when I go on long walks. Whilst I was a trainee instructor, I fell / jumped / took a controlled manoeuvre from the top of a climbing wall, top of a bouldering wall that is, and I landed right on the join between two mats. Now on top of that join there was a Velcro bit of strapping that holds the mats together, so that you don't go between them. Well, the Velcro was perished, and I went bang straight between them, ankle went over, and I then spent a long time lying on the floor whilst all my friends sort of tiptoed around going, should we go to hospital, should we not go to hospital, what should we do? And some poor lady from the climbing wall had to hold my very smelly climbing feet that had freshly come out of their shoes, and yeah, so I really damaged the ankle quite badly, spent a while in a wheelchair, which at the time I think a lot of people saw as being a bit overkill. They're thinking I'm sort of playing on it a bit, but to this day my ankle still gives me problems, and it does affect me whenever I go on walks. So that'd be my worst injury. Meg Carrigan said, how did you train to be an instructor? So I actually did a year-long traineeship as a trainee instructor at a centre called Pioneer in the West Midlands, and that was brilliant. It was it was a year of living on site in a residential centre. So groups would come to us from schools and youth groups and churches and things. They'd stay on site in their own accommodation. We'd be off in our own accommodation, and every morning we'd go wake them up, we'd eat with them, we'd take them out on sessions, we did loads of activities, have lunch, you know, everything, the whole day with the groups. And you maybe would have a group for 3 days at a time normally, and throughout that year you were sort of taught to instruct the different types of session, how to cover different things, and yeah, that was a brilliant introduction to working in the outdoors, and that's where I started getting my qualifications. I then progressed to get other professional qualifications too. Freya Kemp has asked, do you prefer instructing indoors or out? I think probably both. They've both got their own challenges, and they're both fun, and I don't think you can really decide. You know, one day it's going to be lovely and sunny outside, you wish you were out there. The next day it's going to be, I don't know, horrible and rainy or snowing, and you think, maybe I'll be happy to go over to the indoor wall today. So it kind of depends. Becca has asked, if you weren't an instructor, what would you be doing? I'd probably be working in farming or tree surgery, one of the two, not 100% sure. Lucky that I have landed myself the dream career of being an instructor, really. Wouldn't want to do anything else unless I absolutely had to. So, yeah, that would bounce that. And Timothy Allen has asked, as an instructor, do you use a harness with 4, 5 or 7 gear loops? I use a harness with 5 loops generally. I have had harnesses with 7. I've never had a harness with 4. 4 would not be enough for me. I think if you instruct indoors, 4 is probably fine, but I use one harness for sort of lots of different things, indoors, outdoors, and so, yeah, if I'm going to be doing that, I need at least 5 loops. Becca Moore has also asked, what's the scariest moment that turned out to be fine? And I'd say for me that was probably the first time I ever heard a child say from the top of a climbing wall, my knot's just come undone. And I thought, oh my goodness, someone's about to die, it's all my fault, and it's this tiny cute little child. What they actually meant, and I'm sure many indoor climbing instructors can relate to small children saying this, is where they'd held onto their knot and sat back at the end of the climb, they'd sort of fiddled with the stopper knot a little bit, holding there, and they'd undone the stopper knot. Now, of course, the figure of 8 that we were using on that day, totally fine to be used without a stopper knot, and it had just been the stopper knot had been sort of fumbled by them holding that bit of rope, and it had come undone. But that was the scariest moment ever in one of my first ever climbing sessions, for someone to say, my knot's just come undone, as they're sitting back at the top of the wall. Oh my goodness, did I need a new pair of shorts that day. Joanne Furs, I'm sorry if that's not how you say last name. Most important bit of equipment as an instructor. I've got it with me right now. It's a watch. Doesn't matter what kind of watch. I've just the other day changed having a digital watch. Used to have an analog one. Doesn't really matter. You need a watch for everything. You need to know what time your session starts, what time it finishes, what time you've got to leave one place for work to get to another, what time you started walking, where you should be at what other time. You know, watches are just absolutely the most essential bit of kit for an instructor. Whether you're walking, climbing, shooting, caving, no matter what it is, if you don't have a watch, you're immediately setting yourself up to fail, and you've really got to make sure you do have one. Martha Henlock has asked, what is the worst part about being an instructor? For me, this is quite a simple one. I don't like when people don't want to be there. So if someone comes, for example, to the course room climbing wall week after week after week, and it's obvious that I'm sort of operating as a babysitting service so that their parents can go off and do other things. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate there are other things that need to be done in people's lives. I'm not saying you shouldn't come and, drop your child off at climbing and then, go to the gym or go quickly nip to the shops. What I'm saying is when there is a child who does not like climbing at all, they really despise it, and yet they keep coming week after week after week because they're told they have to. That is the worst bit of my job, is having to deal with people who don't want to be there because it takes away from the activities and sessions for everybody else. I don't mind when people are a bit unsure about an activity or a particular element of something, and we've kind of got to work through that. That's fine, that's brilliant. In fact, that's pushing ourselves and, challenging our horizons, and that's 100% what we want to encourage people to do. But when they just straight up don't want to be there, that's really hard. And last but not least, one-to-one sessions or groups. This has obviously been asked by another instructor. I think Joel Denton. Denton or Dainton? Let me know in the comments. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I really like working with people on a one-to-one basis, certainly when I'm working with children from schools where they're maybe not the most well-behaved child. It's great to have them in a one-to-one setting, because if you've got a whole group of kids who misbehave in school, when they come out with you and do stuff with you know, archery equipment, they're still going to be misbehaving, and you definitely don't want that. So one-to-one sessions are brilliant for that kind of application, and they're great for coaching and teaching people in a really sort of advanced way. So one-to-one indoor climbing coaching would not be the same if you had 4 people there. It would just be a weird kind of group coaching session, and although there's a place and time for that, it wouldn't do the same thing as a one-to-one session does. But that being said, I love that group sessions mean we can have loads of people get involved. We can have birthday parties, we can have regular group sessions. People can make friends, they can network, they can get to know people, and it gives you more to build upon as an instructor and as the people in the group. So that'd be my answer there. So that's my answers to the questions in the Instructor Life Q&A. Watch the page and YouTube channel for upcoming videos. There will be a few more that sort of outline my questions and answers with regards to climbing and things, but yeah, that's the video for today. See you all, bye-bye. I'm stuck in the tree. Too many rats in the project.